I'm Michael, this is Eclecticism, and today we're celebrating the first birthday of this channel. The first ever video where I defended and resequenced Metallica's bloated butt rock album Load received more views than I was expecting, or really wanted, considering I had no idea what I was doing yet. The visual choices in that video now make me cringe a little when I watch it. Anyway, in celebration of 1 year, I'm going to answer some of your questions, highlight some of my favorite moments, talk about my plans for year 2, and I also want to just give some thanks and shout outs to some other YouTube channels I think you might like if you're here on mine. So let's get the biggest thanks out of the way up front. Thank you for watching. I enjoy making these videos, but they do take a lot of effort, so I don't know if I would have stuck with it if there weren't people watching and interacting and really engaging about music in a way that's mostly positive. So if you're watching this right now, thank you for supporting the channel. Eclecticism has in 1 year gone from a starting place of 0 subscribers to more than 7,500, and that is ridiculous. It's way beyond what I envisioned. My real goal for the first year when I started, I thought it would be really cool if I managed to get up to 1,000. And I thought that was pretty unlikely, honestly. So I'm really excited about how things have gone so far. Okay, so I posted a couple places asking for your questions, and here are the answers. The first and the most common question I've gotten is, why don't you include samples of songs? The short answer is just copyright law. I don't want my videos to get pulled offline. Early on, when I didn't have many subscribers, I did include samples quite a bit, but at this point I put so much time and effort into every video that I'd be really pissed if one of them got removed or got blocked from a lot of countries because some copyright policy changed or because a record company decided it no longer wanted to be shared in certain areas. If I were just sitting here talking to my camera about music, I'm sure I'd test my luck a bit more, but the process for making the videos where I do a lot of animation and a lot of research, it does make it so much work that I just don't want to lose the work I'm doing. So instead I just share a playlist. If you really want to hear the music, you can check that out. If you really want to, intertwine the two, you could even pause the video, watch a little song sample, come back to it, make your own song samples. Phil D Music asks, do you have a favorite genre and band/artist? I do have a stock answer for this, which is I listen to everything, especially punk and post-punk. But at this point in my life, I probably put more time into listening to metal than I do any other genre. Part of that's because it's a newer discovery for me. I only really started listening to metal around like 2018, I'd say, and it's been growing on me steadily, like some kind of tumor. Another part of this is that my tastes have gone more and more aggressive as time has gone on for some reason. Not sure what that says about me. As far as bands or artists, my lifelong favorite, who I got into when I was like 14, is REM. Their early music has always connected with me very deeply, and it was very cool also to watch them musically evolve throughout the 90s and the rest of their career, always experimenting with their sound, never staying in one place for too long. I think it's really cool that they managed to go from the underground to the mainstream while still being very weird and true to themselves. Some others who are really high up on my list are Kate Bush, The Cramps, Charlie XCX, Cocteau Twins, and Dead Can Dance. I think at some point I'll do a video talking about all of them and probably redo that Charlie XCX video at some point. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts on REM, the first episode of the Eclecticism podcast over on the Patreon is all about ranking their albums. Rach H asks, what's the most obscure genre of music you've encountered? So this is a fun question, and I feel like there are a few I could pick here, but one is just too weird and funny not to include: mushroom synth. Within the already niche genre of dungeon synth, there are a handful of artists exclusively composing work about mushrooms and fungi. I came across this little genre while researching pumpkin synth for the Halloween ambient episode. Around that same time, I was having fun looking into a bunch of other micro-dungeon synth genres, and there's like dwarven synth, garden synth, comfy synth, but for me, mushroom synth is the most amusing, so there you go. What are your favorite albums of 2025 so far? So I've not gone that deep into what was come out so far this year, really. I have to say I'm not blown away by most of what I've heard, and that could just be a me thing. I feel like the first part of this year has been more stressful for me than usual, so maybe that's affecting how new things sound to me. But I do have some favorites. So probably at the top of the list is the third album by Darkside called Nothing. This is a project of Nicholas Jarre and David Harrington, and this is experimental electronic with some elements of ambient, krautrock, dance music. They do a whole lot of different things on here, and it all feels very cohesive, and it all is done excellently. I've liked all of their albums. I think this one, though, is the most diverse yet, but somehow it also hangs together the best. It feels like the most complete and excellent album. So the second would be the new Viagra Boys album. Very good as always. This is their 4th album, and it's close to being my favorite. I'd say Cave World probably still slightly tops it, but this one is full of clever, surreal, and funny lyrics, and it also shows a lot of range for a dance punk project. They even pull off ballads. Then Caroline's second album, Caroline 2, is really cool. This is post-rock that allows itself to experiment without focusing a lot on the musical swelling and falling that's kind of overdone sometimes in this genre. It feels electronic, poppy, and folky. It includes Caroline Polachek on there. In some ways, I find it more boundaryless than a lot of the post-rock. Then the debut album by All Seeing Dolls is a really good one. Someone recommended this album in a comment on the channel a while ago, and I've spent a lot of time listening to it ever since then. It's drowsy and atmospheric psychedelic folk, I guess, and it's got a lot of stunning songs on it with beautiful vocals. Then a newish one, probably the most niche of these, is Phil Langero's Practical Dancing for the Modern Man. This one's really been growing on me. It's industrial in the original sense, some experimental soundscapes that explore stark and tribal but menacing beats, with lots of noise and weird sound effects being played with. He sounds a little like Tom Waits, but often he's so far in the background that it just sounds like you're in a cave where some kind of creepy ritual is happening elsewhere. Oh, and then I guess I have to mention the new Throwing Muses album, Moonlight Concessions. I love Throwing Muses, they're a great band, and this album is a subtler acoustic album. It sounds like it could have been more of a Kristen Hirsch solo album, maybe. The songs in here are still really powerful and memorable. The album's simplicity just helps to bring out how good the songs themselves are. Okay, one more. The new Turnstile. This moves even farther from their original hardcore sound, and they do so confidently, I think. I've not listened to it enough to know if it's my favorite from them yet, but I do really like where they're going, and I think it's really an interesting album. So it's been getting a lot of spins lately. Okay, moved twice in the last month, what the hell? This question segues nicely into the next topic, which is me oversharing a little bit about the ridiculous last year of my life. So feel free to skip if you aren't interested, but I feel like I need to say something about it. And because my videos are usually fairly focused, I don't really get into personal stuff very often in them. So this is me telling you how I'm doing. My partner Joy and I, we have moved around a lot since we've been married. A few years ago, we moved from Seattle to London, and we planned to stay in London for a good long while. We wanted to become citizens, save up for a house. Joy has multiple sclerosis, and her medication in the US is ridiculously expensive. And every time her insurance changed or renewed, she always had to fight to make sure it was covered. We could not afford it. So essentially, that made it really easy to decide to get out of the country and find one that actually has healthcare. So because of America's dumpster fire of a healthcare system, we knew things could get really bad for us if we stayed in the US, especially if support for healthcare in the government got worse. Boy, were we right. So we moved to the UK. Things weren't perfect, but they were a hell of a lot better than they were. Then one day, I think this was like last November, Joy couldn't walk. If you want to pinpoint it, I think it was while I was working on the Goth's Not Dead video, because I remember going back and forth between the hospital and then going home and working on editing for that to try and take my mind off everything that was going on. This was a huge MS relapse, and she spent a week in the hospital while they made sure it was MS and not something else. So now she's a full-time wheelchair user, and this meant she needed to change her career. Fortunately, she was able to get a new job that was more accessible in Manchester. And Manchester's way more accessible for someone in a wheelchair than London anyway, so it worked out in multiple ways. So anyway, with a fairly short turnaround, we planned to move to Manchester. About 2 months ago, we moved into a flat we'd only seen videos of, and it turned out the footage wasn't even the flat we were moving into. It was a poorly constructed apartment, despite being overpriced for the area. Half the appliances didn't work, maintenance took forever to get back with us or fix anything. There were also some really massively shady things going on with electric bills that we kept hearing about from other people who lived there, so we knew that was going to be a big problem if we stayed. It was a terrible, toxic place, and thankfully they were so clueless, they forgot to put a fee in our lease if we were to leave early. So when we discovered that, we just started looking again like 2 weeks after we moved in. So we moved not too far into a place that's genuinely great. In just the month that we were living there, they had 100% turnover of the staff that we interacted with. I could literally make a whole video telling you just how shitty this place was. I mean, I've lived 20-something places in my life, and this was the worst one ever. And it was billed as a luxury flat. So that's why we moved twice in 1 month. I don't recommend it. What I will say is I'm so glad we moved when we did. With all the new changes to healthcare in the US happening right now, there are going to be a lot of people who die. And we feel very lucky that we were able to get out when we did, so that instead of being bankrupt right now because of my wife's relapse, we've been able to adjust and still move and both have careers that we love. So anyway, I really hope the next year's less dramatic, but who knows? I'd like to spend the next year getting to know Manchester and the people who live here, and getting back into more of a rhythm with this channel, because it's really been hard with all of that going on to keep up with, putting out videos regularly. I really do want to get a schedule going. One of my goals for year 2 is to find a steadier rhythm for videos, whatever that ends up being. I'm thinking it's probably going to be like every 3 weeks. That's a manageable amount considering the work that goes into research and then also editing these videos. So I've also kicked off a podcast going more in depth into music with my brother, which is posted over on Patreon, the Eclectic Pod. We've done a second episode of that, which I'm editing now, and I'd like to get on a steadier schedule of that, having one of those come out every month. That's been really fun because it's been a chance to talk to my brother about music, and we used to do that all the time growing up, but we haven't lived in the same place for so long that it's just something that doesn't happen much anymore. Speaking of the Patreon, I set that up fairly early, because I really thought it would be a better, easier way to budget in things like if I want to travel somewhere and interview a band, or paying for software to make better online interviews or podcasts. Just open up the options of what I can do with the channel. That hasn't worked quite like I hoped. Despite the number of channel subs, there's been no support on Patreon or Coffee. If the channel starts having a little bit of a profit, then I'd like to do more special episodes with bands. I love the idea of putting together an eclecticism online zine that includes people's perspectives beyond just mine. I think it would be fun if it felt like there was a more community element to the channel. To me, that's really the piece that I care about the most with all of this. I mean, it's fun making the videos, but what's really fun is getting a chance to talk about music. It's not something that a lot of people in my personal life are into it to the ridiculous level of depth that I am. One of my long-term goals, probably not for year 2, but I think it would be really cool to have an actual Discord server or something similar to talk about music on and to share new music recommendations, just something that's a more dedicated kind of community space. So I have lots of big, lofty goals. I know that a lot of them are not going to happen for a while, but I'm also very aware of how much luck I've already had, and I'm going to try and be patient about building up support for the channel and expanding what the channel is and what it does. I want to just mention some of the highlights of the first year, both with experiences that happened because of the channel and some of the videos that for me were a big deal for one reason or another. Obviously, it was a big deal to make my first video. I had been thinking about making a channel for years. I'd thought it would be fun to do something on music or maybe horror movies, 2 things that I'm very obsessed with. And for a long time, I was wondering whether I could just do like a vinyl community channel and whether anybody would actually watch that. Because my record collection is cute and random. It's not really worth showing off. But then I decided to just focus on talking about music itself, thinking of channels like Deep Cuts or Polyphonic as inspirations. Some of the other channels I looked at a lot early on were like Trash Theory and Sound of History. Even Wyatt's channel, Wyatt Times Him, because he does show vinyl in some of his videos, but many are just focused on talking about music and also like a wide variety of music. So my first topic came from the most recent music conversation I'd had at the time, which was just resequencing load and trying to show that it did have good elements to it. I turned what started out as a Discord post into a video, so that's how this whole thing started. Then I thought I was great at making videos, and my second video was about Charlie XCX during Brat Summer. I thought that was going to make the channel blow up. Nobody watched it. Apparently, I don't know, maybe Gen Z doesn't want to watch some old dude talking about current pop stars. Or maybe there was just too much Charlie XCX content out there at the time. But the next big video for me was Punk's Not Dead, because that feels like the first video where all the elements of what I was trying to do came together. I felt like I actually had figured out my visual style a bit. And conveniently, it was the first video people really started watching. With that one, I went from 18 subscribers to over 600, and it's still my most popular video. As far as my visual style goes, I think my quality jumped again when I made horror punk. And I think I've stayed at about that level for most of the year, just kind of playing around with like narrative and different structures for videos. But the new Shoegaze Iceberg video, I feel like is the next step in evolution in my editing style. I feel really proud of that video. And it probably wasn't as big of a deal for those of you just watching, but it was really fucking cool to be able to interview Black Doldrums and go record shopping with them. They're a band I've been listening to since their debut album, and after I talked about them in the Goth's Not Dead video, they left a comment on it. Whenever that happens, it's a surprise and it's really cool, but the fact that it was them and it was a band that I've been following for a good long while, or a few years anyway, that made it feel extra special. And it's happened a few times now. I've even had a couple of the bands reshare my videos on their own Instagrams, like Blitzkid and Rose Garden Funeral Party. So a huge thanks to those awesome bands for supporting my channel too when they didn't have to. My buddy Joe came out to London to be able to help out with that Black Doldrums video, and he managed to avoid ever being in a camera shot. But nonetheless, I do want to thank him for helping with that very special video. And of course, I want to thank Sophie, Kevin, and Daniel from Black Doldrums, who are all super cool and willing to come try a weird video format with some random YouTuber. So you guys rock. Thanks for being involved. If you like my channel, I'm guessing you watch other channels on this here YouTube. I also want to share some other great music channels that I like to support to try and, spread the word about them as well. Overall, I'm trying to focus on channels that are smaller than mine, but there are a couple exceptions I just have to talk about. So first, Deep Cuts. This is a great channel ran by Oliver, who has broad and interesting taste in music. He's also really skilled at talking about music in an insightful, thoughtful way. I've been watching his videos for years, and he'd retired from video making for a while, but just a month ago he made his return. And in his very first video back, he clearly wanted to start some beef with me.
You can see why he dropped the Michael for the stage name. Not very rock and roll really, is it? Sorry to any Michaels who may be watching.
Oh, is Michael a terrible name for rock music? Oliver? A lot of what I watch are vinyl community videos because even if you don't collect vinyl yourself, it can be a really great way of finding out about new stuff you didn't know about, or more often, old stuff that's new to you. One of my newer favorites is Married to Vinyl. These two have a huge collection. From what we see in the videos, it feels more like an archive of indie or alternative than it does a personal collection. They may be slightly crazy, given the number of albums they have multiple copies and formats of, but I love their energy, their research, and enthusiasm. For your punk needs, I really recommend Middle Life Crisis Rants. He has punk covered in depth, with almost all of his content focused on an incredibly deep punk collection that he has. You'll learn about punk from all parts of the globe here. And then for metal, I recommend Altars of Madness, Wyatt again, and Wheels of Mercury. Altars of Madness has a vast collection with extra focus on the more extreme side of the genre. Wyatt has a good range of representation on his channel with a lot of interesting music history mixed in, and he branches out from metal as well. Then Wheels of Mercury is good for keeping up with some of the newer releases. He often focuses on his current top albums. As far as that goes, The Accusation Network is another good one, covering new releases and vinyl reissues. For more experimental music, I really recommend Stunt Rock Confusion. The host, who goes by Stunty, has a live show on Friday nights where he spins records that cover basically every genre, with more than a little avant-garde stuff mixed into it. I like dropping in on those live videos when I'm around on a Friday night, but I also like watching the past sessions, often like in the background while I'm doing something else. I've discovered a lot of really cool stuff on his channel. And then Every Last One does a mix of album reviews with music history and does some genre overviews as well. His focus tends to lean more electronic, new wavy, and post-punky, although he's also gone into industrial and has a variety of video styles, so you also get a pretty decent range over there. For underground and more experimental, one other that I just thought of is Outside Noise. They cover new releases that go from noise to free jazz to punk to metal to everywhere else. I've not had a whole lot of luck with finding channels with eclectic music who have younger hosts, and I'm guessing that's more about the algorithm than the lack of them actually being out there. But this is one that I really enjoy. So, before we move on from that topic, who are some of your favorite underknown YouTube content creators? Share them in the chat and tell us why we should check them out. If you're another music-related channel that I've interacted with and I've forgotten to include, I'm sorry, maybe I'll get you when I do the year 2 wrap-up. Okay, so that's everything for this one. Thanks for watching me ramble a bit about the channel. Thanks for supporting the channel over the last year. Despite my uneven schedule, I have every intention of sticking around and making a lot more videos this year, and hopefully topping the last year in terms of how good they are. If you want to help the channel grow even more, consider supporting on Patreon. For £5, you can have access to the Eclectic Pod podcast. You can vote for thumbnails on the videos. You can have access to extra playlists. You can vote for video topics. And think about that. There's nobody subscribed over there now, so if you were the first person and you're the only one voting on topics, you're basically picking topics. If I summed up the message behind this whole channel, it's that there's always some new musical avenue to explore, some new style or scene to be found if you keep looking. You're never too old to discover new music that you love. I'm always optimistic that there's great music still out there to be found, and so far I've never been let down by that belief. Thanks for watching Eclecticism, and I'll see you in the next one.